Shift Happens podcast.
Welcome to Shift Happens, where we dive deep into all things digital transformation in the workplace. Today, we're thrilled to explore the power of adopting a digital-first mindset and how it can advance your digital workplace with Tanya Hannah, CIO of Aon North America.
Shift Happens podcast. Shift Happens podcast.
So Tanya, what does it mean to have a digital-first mindset? You've worked with a lot of different kinds of organizations, different kinds of people. So in your mind, how can organization have that mindset, digital-first?
As we've seen over the last several years, disruptions occur and organizations need to adapt in real time, near real time. And organizations that I want to say prosper the best are those that really use technology as a core enabler of their business. And when we look at industries, every industry has technology included, right? And when you're trying to reach, whether it's a consumer, B2C or B2B, you have to really think about how can you leverage the assets that your organization has. Some of it is, physical assets, it's IP, that intellectual property that your most talented assets are creating for your organization. But it's also those intangible assets, digital, that you can leverage to help your organization be able to compete, right? Or to bring services faster. And I mean, you have assets like data. How do you unlock data if it's siloed and it's not accessible to parts of your organization that can really use it to monetize it, to better understand where your business opportunities lie? And I think that really is the essence of digital first. It's not technology, and Docs, I say this all the time. It's not technology for technology's sake. There is so much technology out in the world. It's very, very expensive. You don't need everything. What you need is the key things that help to drive your business, whatever that might be, or to help your organization meet its goals, right? It's got to deliver business value. And when we think about digital first, it always reminds me everyone had their Blackberries or their Crackberries, right? And super happy. And then here comes the sleek iPhone. It's simplistic. And yet it opens up and disrupts a whole nother and creates a whole nother business model that everyone else wanted to imitate. And I think that's what's occurring right now in the world. So if you're not thinking about how you can enable your employees to do their jobs better, faster, or if you aren't thinking about how you can meet your clients, your customers, where they're at in whatever form that they need services rendered.
Well said. And I wonder, as you described that, I started to wonder the change that the organization goes through. What are some of the processes that you feel are sort of critical to making sure that you start that movement? Is it, for example, thinking of creative ways to get people just engaged and involved first? Like, does it start there, or does it start in a place where you need to think about the benefits and get people excited by saying, these are the benefits, and then let that sort of lead the way?
Mario, that's interesting. I live in the world where you should be proactive and predictive. So for me, I think it's both, right? It starts with people. And one of the things that we have to be careful of is the larger the organization is, the more built up inertia it has to move. thousands of dollars or a couple of hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? But as the organization is much larger, that may or may not necessarily be the case, right? Especially if you're looking in research, like pharmaceuticals. That lead time is a lot because it takes a lot to develop, but it starts with people. And you have to get your teams, your colleagues excited about the art of possible. And one of the things that we see in high performing organizations is the energy that the colleagues, the teams bring, right? They understand the business processes. They have ways to be innovative. They inspire others to think bigger, right? Because it's like my organization, my business is going to support these particular ideas because the hardest part of any of this work is not the technology. All of those factor into the decisions you want to make, but ultimately you still need buy-in from the people within the organization. You need them to want to move, to want to adapt. And it's one thing to say, hey, I'm going to be agile and I'm going to deliver agile methodology. That doesn't mean that your organization's going to be agile, right? So, caring about the people and bringing them into the process is super critical. But more importantly, and Mario, you're a strategist. You need to know what is the vision? Where are we going? And I think a lot of organizations don't have that.
So no, so this is awesome, and the key points you raise, right? So let's try to connect these dots, and would love to hear your thoughts. So people is important, and really focus on to have a digital first mindset, focus on the business value, be agile, and make sure that we meet the needs of the people. One thing you highlighted, which is very important, is you talked about how startups can have a fail fast, fail forward mindset. And one of the reasons I think that is too is startups, everybody's all hands on deck, right? So if you look at larger organizations, be public sector or private companies, is that there's this unspoken understanding that if you want to go digital, it's IT's job, right? On one hand, IT has to help and focus on the business. But on the other hand, in a lot of organizations, the business side, they're like, oh, digital, that's IT's job. That's not my job. Don't bug me.
I would disagree.
Exactly, right?
I would disagree.
I disagree too. So we're in this interesting time where IT's role is far more important. I mean, it's always been important, but now IT needs to be that partner in the business, regardless if they're because oftentimes they're viewed as just deploying technology. But then having this digital first mindset, it also means it's business critical. Or techniques have you employed to have that true partnership with a business in IT?
So, first of all, I disagree. I think the days of um, enterprises looking at IT as just like the back office, and all they do is deploy technology that I may or may not like and make my life miserable. I think those days are long gone. Where I see the intersection of business and IT is around partnership and dialogue on what I, as the business, need to do these three things. And tech, can you tell me what's the best way? Understanding what needs to happen in order for the business to grow by X or to deliver a new product, right? You have to listen to understand, not listen to listen, but to really understand what are the requirements. Where does who are the clients that the business needs to satisfy, and how can tech help? The second thing is around collaboration and partnership. It is a joint venture where you're coming up with ideas, and it's about not only who do you have in the room, but also those who aren't in the room, and really being able to surface those ideas that really help the organization go farther than they would have. Um, and then finally, I would say it also goes back to strategy. What does the business want and need? A lot of times we forget that we got to know which direction we're heading in, because if not, I'm thinking ducks, we're going straight ahead, and Mario's like, why
Mm-hmm.
are we
Where are we
moving
going?
at all? Like, where are we going? And I think what has to happen is, or there's more pressure on businesses to really keep their strategies and direction like up to date. So as I was um, looking at Twitter, I did this case study a while ago when I was speaking to a guest lecturer at University of Washington, and I used Twitter, and we were talking about the everything. You know, it wants to be the Amazon. The Twitter is the everything store. Well, if I'm in that space, I've got to adapt too, because my competitors are adapting. And that's where strategy comes in. Or am I going to stay my course, or am I going to do something totally different? You've got to be able to shift, right? Literally shift in real time, near real time. And that comes with understanding the business, the industry we're operating in. What are consumers doing? What are the businesses doing? Or and adapting. If there's a supply chain disruption like what's going on the West Coast, what are you going to do if your products are sitting on the containers out here in, you know, out in the bay? What are you going to do? Um, and I think that's what the fun part is. But if you're constantly talking and having dialogues with your executive leadership teams and with your business partners, your understanding as IT, what are the levers that you can bring, right, to help solve these problems, because they're integrated problems.
Oh, very true.
They're not, it's not a silo.
So on that point, do you think that combined actions shape the value, especially when you have leaders that really are saying, let's make this work together and sort of, yeah, bring those
Absolutely.
initiatives, and then that begins a broader sense of the mind shift that needs to occur, because there's always going to be resistance to change, right? It's just natural.
I would agree, but what I found, I don't know if you've seen it, there's, 20% of an organization probably will always be the lag, right? And then you've got probably the 20-25% that every time there's something new, they're like me first, but they love change. So it doesn't matter. If you switch directions quickly, everyone gets whiplash. They're like, okay, what's next? It's the 50% in the middle, right? And that's about average. So you have to be clear about the direction you're going. It's always a win-win in every situation. How the employees, the colleagues can benefit. How does the organization benefit from the move? We're never going back to what it was before, and we're certainly not going to move any slower than what we're moving now.
Now, I agree with your last statement. It feels like we're in this new sort of continuum of accepting, and I certainly have, when I'm out there speaking with many of our customers and partners, hear from them that there's now more willingness and openness to be creative and listen to a new idea. At the same time, I've also listened to a lot that have mentioned the failures that have occurred from moving too quickly into a new technology or changing without, thorough sort of analysis of what is the impact of that change. And I'm curious to hear in your experience when you've had a little bit of friction of whether it's the mindset shift that we need in order to get the action. What are some of the mitigating factors that have worked for you and the teams that you've led?
So I always go back to our strategy, right? Because that's your true north of the organization. Where is it going? Um, if you've got a solid strategy, you don't just throw it out like overnight. It may shift some based upon real world conditions, but it still provides those guardrails for the organization. When there have been failures, a lot of it has been around two factors that I've seen. One, a failure to really understand what are the requirements. Actually, maybe I'll make it three. Um, but just what are the basic requirements? Um, the second part we've gotten tripped up is process. Organizations want to automate, or organizations, we're changing our back office, or we're trying to understand data. A lot of times we get lost in just the administrative minutia overhead of everything that's going on, and we lose sight of what we like of the intended direction. And then third is something that I've thought back over my career is execution. Just because we need to move in a direction does not mean we're the best to execute it. And I think organizations, sometimes it's a bad bet is a bad bet, right? The BlackBerry is going to be fantastic, but then the iPhone just takes that idea and it's done. Why is Netflix much more successful than some of the others? Probably because they're very good at execution to move an organization forward. So you need everyone contributing, and everyone has to buy in.
As I'm listening to you, I can't help but think it's important to almost reimagine the workforce working differently,
Yeah,
because an integrated workforce can actually accomplish a lot to deliver better products or, improve the go to market. And if you tap into the enablers that make that function today, you have the opportunity that many of those enablers will be digital services, right? If the digital services are deployed effectively and the workforce is much more efficient and agile and many of the things you've mentioned, Tanya, then it could be really one of those areas that can create a lot of potential for the business, to be transformative. In fact, it could even be a disruptor.
absolutely. But I think it goes back to people, where we started our conversation. Every organization has a culture. The most successful organizations have a culture where they value innovation, collaboration, partnership. They also got a vision. And you have to buy into that particular vision, or just, I don't know, the magic won't happen.
Yeah.
So you've got to be the best version of yourself, or your organization has to be the best version of itself. But the enablers of that to happen is built on relationships, right? Where teams can discuss ideas, the best way to solve business problems. The thing is, we're always looking for the magic bullet or the secret sauce. And so, while imitation is the best form of flattery, it's not going to get you market share. It's not going to have you deliver services, right? Every business has to have a why. And if I'm going to be digital first and I need to operate today, what's going to help me separate my business from everyone else? I mean, you can only rest on your laurels for so long before disruption changes.
Yeah, very true. And that's why I think the mindset is tied to the way individuals participate in driving action. When you don't see a balance of that mindset shift is where you kind of experience a lot of, restriction or friction in the overall opportunity that's in front.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I think a lot of that is the result of lack of strategy or a vision.
Hmm.
See, the thing to operate in digital, I think we can all agree, is there's got to be a vision and there needs to be a strategy out there. And I think what we see, there are companies that do digital well. We also can identify companies that don't do it so well within any industry. And the thing that strikes me about it being out here in Seattle is, the companies that do it well, they know their customers, they have a strong identity. They use tech as an enabler. It's not a barrier. It's Yes, tech is expensive, but they use it in ways that help them deliver better products and better services. Doesn't mean that they don't have failures because we all do. They learn from it and they become better and stronger because of the failure.
Yeah, I love how you're stressing the importance of strategy and vision, because oftentimes we talk about digital transformation is a journey and not a destination, 100%. But like you said, a lot of organizations, while they're going through this journey, they don't know where they're going. They don't know what their destination is. And that typically causes the biggest issue of them all, where we're deploying technology for technology's sake, but where are we trying to get to? I think that's a big missing piece with a lot of these digital initiatives. And the journey is important.
I think the reason why businesses get lost is because there's so many things to consider. When we're thinking about whether it's B2B or B2C, how are you going to reach customers, right? Some people still prefer analog as opposed to digital. You may have to account for that. You also have to think about foundational investments that your business may or may not have made, right? If the foundation is pretty weak, it's kind of difficult to all of a sudden be digital,
Mm.
and the the price of entry can be prohibitive, right? And so that's where you have to really think about, in the context of your business, what you can or can't do, um, and have a strategy to get there so that you're executing building blocks, right? Because if you're fortunate, maybe some of those building blocks have already been laid and you can just do amazing work. Other times, you may have to actually put in the foundation. And when we're thinking about today, as we're talking about digital today looks very different than it did within the pandemic. Like, I'm sitting here thinking about, you know, not only do you have to worry about cyber and privacy, which are always foundational components, but AI literally has changed
Hmm.
and transformed the game. And organizations that are really ahead are sitting here thinking, how can I leverage AI, especially generative AI, to do all of this new stuff? Maybe potentially, right? Because it can be destructive as well, right? We're going to see destruction. I don't need people. I can have my AI do these sets of jobs. So, the leaders are already beginning to think about how they can potentially pivot and transform.
It is. It feels like in some ways leaders don't think about should not only think about adapting, but they must be adaptive to the change and almost have digital be the means to achieve goals of the organization. Because now if you're not thinking, going back to obviously the shift in the mindset, if you're not thinking digital at the start, then you're going to limit yourself. But it does come back to a lot of what you said, Tanya. We just need to continue to collaborate and work together.
Well, that's the only way we're going to get through, right?
Exactly.
Or make it to the other side. It's going to be a collaboration. The village has to do it. But, I mean, and it's not only AI. You got to think about what's happening in crypto. I mean, that's going to be another, especially if central banks get digital currencies out there. And that's why it's important to invest in your talent, right? That's a key to help your organization be competitive. And I think you have to be willing to let go of the old to make room for the new, which is easier said than done, especially when I'm trying to clean out my closet.
I don't know if you watch show Hoarders, right? but we're like digital hoarding right here. Um, how can they have a digital first mindset, and how can they make that shift happen? What would that be?
Shift happens regardless of whether you're prepared or not.
Mm,
That's the
All
advice.
right.
Like
there
it's
you go.
gonna happen. It's going to happen. It's just whether or not you're going to embrace it or not.
There you go. Because if you're prepared, it shift happens. If you're not prepared, it's the other happens. uh, Tanya, it's been an awesome, awesome conversation.
Shift Happens Podcast.
Thanks for listening. In this episode, we learned that a successful digital transformation starts with a clear strategy and vision. It's crucial to bring everyone on board and create a people-oriented approach to change. Collaboration and a willingness to embrace new technologies are key. Remember, shift happens, but it's up to us to embrace it and thrive in the digital era. If you like today's episode, subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcast. See you next time.
Shift Happens Podcast. Shift Happens Podcast.